Okay, I think we'll get started. Here we are, just about the top of the hour. So today's webinar is the Road to SCOM MI. So we're talking about Microsoft's SCOM Managed Instance. And there's a couple of us here we'll introduce in just a moment. Where the specific topic is migration and monitoring strategies as you're considering maybe a move to SCOM MI. So my name is Jason Baudreau. I'm with SquaredUp. And I'm also joined by Harold Dyck, President and CEO of Silect. So we have a couple of topics to cover off, but before we do, just the typical housekeeping. We do love it if we can make this webinar as engaging as possible. I hope you join the conversation. So do use your GoToWebinar, ask questions, leave comments in there, keep the discussion going. If you don't get an answer to those, we apologize. We'll make sure we do follow up to everybody that asks a question over email. But we'll also have somebody over here. We have Ash from SquaredUp with us, who's going to be on the chat answering those questions as they come in. So please keep them coming. Just to set the scene before I do hand off to Harold, who's going to be the first one to talk it through. And Harold's also going to be talking about kind of what is SCOM MI. I do have this question that we asked last year. We ran the big SCOM survey. Many of you on the call might have participated in that. If you did, thank you. And the question is basically, are you interested in SCOM MI? I'm assuming since you're here, you are. But even last year, when it was still codenamed Microsoft Tequila, I believe at the time, a large group of people were looking ahead and they were interested in SCOM MI, at least more than half. And still at that time, a lot of folks didn't know what it was. So Harold is going to be covering off what is SCOM MI, why should you maybe consider a migration if it is something in the cards for you. And then he's also going to cover off migration strategies and tooling and tips to be able to do that. So like I said, we're dividing this webinar in two parts. Harold's going to talk about tips and tricks for that migration, and then I'm going to pick up for the last bit of the webinar and basically evaluate a world in which you're considering a migration to SCOM MI and offer some recommendations as you're considering visibility and dashboarding solutions along that path to SCOM MI. So we'll break it up into two parts, and without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand off to you, Harold. So why don't you take the first half of the presentation?
Awesome, thank you so much, Jason. Let me share up the right screen. And maybe you could just confirm, Jason, you're seeing my PowerPoint?
There it is, I found it. Yep, thank you, go ahead.
Perfect. All right, thank you so much, Jason. And thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. And thanks SquaredUp for organizing it. These are great sessions for the community and a chance for all of us to learn a little bit more about the SCOM world that we live in. So by way of an agenda for today, what I thought I'd do is just touch on what is SCOM Managed Instance, a good level set to make sure we all understand what we're talking about. And then cover some of the advantages of SCOM MI and some, why would you want to possibly move to SCOM MI? If you make the decision to move to SCOM MI, considerations and things you want to do during that migration, and also showcase some work that we've been doing in the migration area. So just before we begin, just a real quick introduction of Silect Software. We've been serving the system center market now for 20 years. So hopefully you've heard of us. If you haven't, well, you have now. We specialize in solutions which really maximize the return on investment you get from System Center Operations Manager. And we do that providing a set of tools to allow you to manage the complete life cycle of SCOM management packs, from authoring to tuning to override management to version control to reporting and more. We're a longtime Microsoft partner, one of the founders of the System Center Alliance. We're doing a lot of work in Azure as well. We're part of the Azure Management Elite program, as well as the Power BI Red Carpet program. We do offer a number of community tools as well. So just a quick shout out, the Sentinel Security Pack. We offer some fragments. We offer a management pack, a bundle utility, and a couple other tools available from our website. Okay, so let's begin by talking about what is SCOM Managed Instance. Well, basically, it's SCOM in the cloud, I think is how it's commonly referred to. It's the major components of the SCOM infrastructure are living in Azure, and those components being specifically management servers as well as SQL. So in this particular diagram, we're seeing the SCOM MI instance sort of on the bottom right-hand side of the slide. These are pieces that are running in Azure that become really Microsoft's responsibility for ensuring the uptime and availability of those services. Your customer environment, where you're running SCOM, the SCOM agents, the consoles, that really doesn't change, except those agents now report into that SCOM Managed Instance running in Azure. The consoles that you're running on-prem, whether it's a web console or the SCOM console itself, they connect to management servers that are running in Azure. So what does Microsoft describe SCOM MI as being? Basically, SCOM is a managed service. It's a cloud-based alternative to what most of us, perhaps all of us, are running today with our on-prem SCOM infrastructure. And really, really importantly, it does provide full feature parity. And so, most of the things you do today with SCOM, if not all of the things you do today with SCOM, you can do with SCOM Managed Instance. However, you still need to look after your IT. So you're not outsourcing the management of your infrastructure by adopting SCOM MI. You're simply really taking one less thing off of your plate. You no longer have to worry about your management server infrastructure or your SQL infrastructure to support the monitoring of the services and applications running within your IT infrastructure. You still need to respond to alerts. You still need to manage SCOM agents that are running in your environment. You still need to configure monitoring. So you still need to build management packs. You still have to create overrides, etc. Again, the difference being those infrastructure pieces for SCOM are running in Azure and become Microsoft's responsibility for ensuring their availability. So what are some of the reasons why you should consider SCOM MI? And as I said, it's really taking one thing off of your plate. It's ensuring you can continue, of course, to focus on the IT services being properly delivered and monitored within your environment. You no longer have to worry about that server infrastructure to support SCOM. Scalability is one of the big benefits of SCOM MI. It's very simple to upscale your environment, whether you're taking on additional agents or perhaps some additional workloads. It's simple, it's if not trivial, to scale up the management servers in SCOM MI to properly accommodate the workloads that you're putting on SCOM. And similarly for SQL MI, it's very simple to scale up your SQL infrastructure to support your environment. You no longer have to worry about provisioning additional clusters or even additional storage for SQL. That can be done very simply through the Azure portal. I think we all understand SCOM updates and patching SCOM, upgrading SCOM, and some of the challenges associated with keeping versions in sync and keeping Windows versions sync with SQL versions, sync with SCOM versions. Under SCOM MI, it really simplifies that entire process of updating SCOM. And in fact, we've been running the public preview since it became available. I guess, I'm not sure if it was late last year or early this year. Microsoft did provide an update, and we simply clicked on a button to say patch our environment. And sure enough, sometime later, we saw that the environment had been updated. So SCOM MI really simplifies that SCOM update process. If you're not running maybe a current version of SCOM, or let's say you're running SCOM 2019, adopting SCOM MI, you can take advantage of some of the new SCOM 2022 features. So SCOM MI will be based on SCOM 2022. And if you're not running that today in your environment, moving to SCOM MI lets you take advantage of the new features in SCOM 2022, like role-based additional roles that are supported. Alert closure is an issue that I think we've all faced in the past. Team support, and a bunch of other features. You can take advantage of those by moving to SCOM MI. There might be some other considerations within your specific environment, some other reasons why you might want to think about SCOM MI. Perhaps your server infrastructure is dated, needs to be updated. Maybe you've got some equipment leases that are up for renewal. For some of the back-end pieces like the management servers or SQL, SCOM MI, of course, eliminates the need for you to keep those pieces on-prem. Some customers I talk to have a directive to move towards cloud adoption. And this, obviously, SCOM MI gives you just another step, albeit a small step, towards adopting cloud for your organization. So as I talk to customers about SCOM MI, and certainly, a question that's on my mind, probably on a lot of our minds, are what are the costs going to be? If we do move to SCOM MI, how much is it going to cost us? And I do think Microsoft is going to be delivering some tools in this area and some abilities for us to understand those costs. What I thought I would do is share up just almost anecdotally, share up some information about some of the costs that we've seen in SCOM MI. And so this particular slide is just showing us the cost of SCOM MI within our own environment for the past billing cycle, the past month. And so this is really very much a bare bones SCOM MI implementation, very little activity. We just got a handful of agents on there. And the price was about 1,200 Canadian, so that's maybe roughly $1,000 US dollars. But if you look below, you can see the largest cost was associated with SQL Managed Instance. Some of the other pieces like the VPN gateway, for example, many of you will have that in place already, so you don't necessarily roll that into the SCOM MI cost. But certainly SQL appears to be the resource that's going to cost you the most. And if I take a look at, let's just jump over and look at the Azure portal. And I'm just going to make sure that this is indeed sharing the right screen. Yeah, it looks like it is. So this is the Azure portal. We've organized our SCOM MI instance in a single resource group. So I've got all of these resources that you can see here as part of our SCOM MI resource group. If I go a little bit further down, you can see that the SCOM MI instance we have running. But what I thought I'd do is just take a quick look at that SQL SCOM MI instance that we have running and show you that this is a really, really bare bones. This is as simple a SQL instance as we could configure. So you see some characteristics of the service here. You see the cost over here on the right-hand side, which is actually really, really accurate. I think our cost was actually about $680, and this estimate's at $666. So a really accurate estimate of SQL MI. But again, this is not something that you would typically use in a production manner because this needs to get scaled up. And so if I go to, let's say, a business critical service tier, you can see the cost roughly doubles. I might want to use premium series hardware. I might want to increase the cores. Certainly would want to increase the storage. All of these things that we're doing by scaling out SQL, it's really easy, which is great, but obviously it's going to increase our costs as well. Perhaps the biggest cost, though, is going to be related to the SQL license itself. So we're using the hybrid license because we're licensed for SQL. If I choose to go pay as you go, you can see that cost jumps up pretty dramatically. So that's just some visibility into, certainly one of the pieces of SCOM MI that's going to incur costs within your environment. And again, I would expect Microsoft to provide some insight into some cost estimates as SCOM MI comes closer to being generally available. But aside from cost, what are some of the other things to think about? So how do you preserve your existing SCOM investments? A lot of us have spent a lot of time with SCOM. I think the recent SCOM survey showed, many of us have been using SCOM for years and years and years. We built up a pretty sophisticated environment. How do you preserve those existing SCOM investments? And what about third-party solutions? Are the third-party solutions going to be, are they going to work properly with SCOM MI? And I will say from a Silect perspective, we were very happy to see that our solutions just work with SCOM MI. We actually didn't have to do any changes to any of our products to enable them to work properly with SCOM MI, which is great. Other vendors perhaps have the same experience, hopefully have the same experience, but it's certainly something you'd want to make sure those third-party solutions and those integrations will work properly with SCOM MI. For customers that are new to SCOM, we all understand the complexity of the environment. You want to make sure you understand the learning curve associated with that. And you'd also want to make sure that you have the proper network infrastructure in place to support the volume of data, the frequency of data being sent up to Azure, to those management servers that Microsoft is hosting. So if you've made the decision to migrate, there are some sort of standard things that you want to do before you actually do the migration to SCOM MI. And at this point, there's a lot of really good content available within the community on migration. Perhaps sort of the most prominent expert in the area of migration is an organization called TopCore and Bob Cornelissen. And Bob provided me with some insights into some of the things they recommend you do before you migrate. And the first is to make sure your SCOM environment is healthy. Make sure all the components the agents, databases, gateways, etc., management server. Make sure they're healthy before you even consider doing a migration. And then do a review of your environment. And anytime you migrate, even if you're doing a migration from SCOM on-prem to on-prem, it's always a good opportunity to review your setup, review your monitoring configuration, look at your alerts that are happening. Do you really need all those alerts? Do you really need all those rules and monitors? With SCOM MI, you're going to start incurring costs around data collection, so you want to make sure that that is optimized before you actually go ahead with the upgrade to SCOM MI. Another best practice is to have copies of all the sealed and unsealed MPs. You can keep those on the file system, or you can use products like our MP Studio product to do that. And just a note, if you're currently using some older sealed MPs, migrating to SCOM MI, where you're starting to make use of newer sealed management packs, might break some of those monitoring scenarios. So that's just something to be aware of. Some third-party tools are tied to the name of the management group. Of course, those are things that would need to be checked before you do the migration. And again, you'd want to check really with all your third-party integration, all your partners, to make sure that their products will work properly within SCOM MI before doing the upgrade. And another note, just gateways will likely remain on-prem in most scenarios. Gateways that are maybe monitoring network devices or possibly Linux machines will likely remain on-prem, even as you move to SCOM MI. But if you've made the decision to migrate to SCOM MI, today we're going to be showing you an update we've made to our migration assistant, which really simplifies the experience of moving to SCOM MI. And in fact, it dramatically simplifies any side-by-side migration, whether it's SCOM 2019 to 2022 or 2019 to SCOM MI. We include management packs, agents, notification, maintenance schedules, run as profiles, and a lot more of SCOM settings to help you preserve all of those investments you've made in your SCOM environment, preserve those investments as you move to SCOM MI. And so let's take a look at that. And so we've got by way of orientation, I've got my store database. So this is where we keep all the management packs that we're using within our organization. We've got all the sealed management packs from vendors like Microsoft and Silect and others. I've got management packs under development. I've got backups, etc. So here's my copy of all the MPs that we're using. And under the management group tab, you see I have 3 different management groups registered. One of them is a SCOM 2019 environment, and that's going to be where we migrate from. I also have a SCOM 2022 environment on-prem, and I have an instance of SCOM MI here. And that's what we're going to migrate to. So we're going to go from our 2019 environment to SCOM MI using our new migration assistant. The migration assistant covers a lot of different settings that you can see over here on the left-hand side of the screen. It covers management packs, it covers user roles, run as information, et cetera, et cetera. And for some reason, we can't connect to our SCOM MI instance. Let's give this a shot. So the first thing we're going to do is choose our source management group, which is SCOM 2019. Next, we're going to choose the destination, which is our SCOM MI. And here are going to be all the different settings that we are able to migrate using the wizard. So of course, I want to include all my management packs and overrides, both sealed and unsealed. I've got some custom user roles that will migrate. I've got some run as configurations, I think, that were part of some of the, maybe the M365 management pack we have. And let's choose all of these other settings. Actually, I'm not going to choose the data warehouse because we actually can't reach into the destination data warehouse. So we don't really have anything to migrate there. But I will choose maintenance schedules and I will choose agents as well. So next, it's going to do an evaluation of, starting with management packs, the management packs that do not require migration. So here it's showing a list of all the management packs where a newer version already exists in the destination management group. So from my 2019 environment to SCOM MI, there's a bunch of updated management packs that already exist in SCOM MI that we don't need to migrate. And there's a bunch of management packs where the same version exists in both environments. So of course, we don't need to migrate those either. For management packs that do need to be migrated, so here are the case where sealed MPs do not exist in the destination, let me just choose, I'm going to choose the Azure Stack HCI group of MPs here. You know what, let's select all of them, what the heck. So these are MPs that don't exist in the destination, sealed MPs rather, and here are a group of unsealed MPs that don't exist in the destination. So these are all my customizations for HCI, for SQL, for M365, etc. I'm going to include all those management packs in this run of the migration. I have a number of custom roles defined in my 2019 environment, so let's include all of those as part of the migration. I also have some run as configuration settings that will include. These are all related to the M365 management pack that we're running. Custom resolution states can include all of those as well. And so you see what we're trying to do with all of these settings is trying to capture all of your existing investments in SCOM and help you move those into the new environment. I've got some administration, I've got some custom grooming settings that I'm going to migrate, resource pool, maintenance schedules. So here I can migrate one or more maintenance schedules to our new environment. And last but certainly not least is agent selection. So what we're going to do with agents, we're actually not going to migrate those agents to the new environment, but rather we're going to add SCOM MI. We're going to multi-home those agents and include the SCOM MI instance for them. So I'll select the two Azure Stack systems. And just by way of this agent migration, we do have a lot of granularity that we offer in terms of how to make this happen successfully. SCOM doesn't necessarily do a great job when you throw a lot of agents at it very, very quickly. So we have some ways of sort of throttling that back and scaling the addition of all these new agents to the new SCOM MI environment. So once we're done, we can see a summary screen showing us all the things that are going to get migrated to the new environment. Hitting finish, it's going to go ahead and start that migration process. You see the little taskbar at the bottom left-hand side. Now this process can take a while, and so I don't suggest we wait here until it completes. But what we're going to see when it's completed is we're going to see a screen something like this that shows us the results of the migration. It'll show us the MPs, the settings, user roles, schedules, et cetera, that get migrated as part of this migration from SCOM MI. And so, you know, we really feel strongly that this is going to be a tool, a really valuable tool for you to use as you migrate to the SCOM MI environment. It certainly doesn't replace, you know, the expertise that you've developed in-house or that's available elsewhere within the community. And this migration assistant that I was showing you is part of our MP Studio product, and it's going to be generally available as part of the next release of MP Studio within the next week or so. And so that concludes the session on SCOM migration. Now, really importantly is some of the visualization work with SCOM MI. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jason to speak to us about that.
All right, thanks, Harold. Yeah, I'm gonna pick up from there and you know, assume that you're interested in SCOM MI migration and you know, maybe thinking more broadly about your strategy as you're doing so. And a big part of that strategy to your monitoring strategy in SCOM MI is your visibility around all that data. And that's where the topic here is about monitoring and dashboarding with SCOM MI. A couple things to point out when you look at the Azure Gateway here. Although everything that Harold just talked about, all the benefits of SCOM MI and the hosting being managed by Microsoft in Azure, it's important to point out that the front end management of SCOM day to day remains unchanged. It's a SCOM web console that's the default interface for SCOM. And so if you're looking for visibility of all that different data, Microsoft recommends a couple different options. I outlined them here in the picture. The first one being for reporting, of course, there's Microsoft's Power BI. So Microsoft recommends that you use Power BI for the reporting. But we're also proud to have partnered with Microsoft. We've been working with them for many years, and when we did so as well in the preparation for SCOM MI. So they're recommending SquaredUp for your dashboarding. So you can connect to SquaredUp and bring all your monitoring to life with SquaredUp's interactive dashboards. And so I wanted to take a moment to talk about the problem that SquaredUp has solved for SCOM in the past, and how that actually is, potentially changing in a landscape where you're migrating more to the cloud. As Harold mentioned, a big step towards that cloud journey is SCOM MI, perhaps, or perhaps you're even farther along that journey, and there's things to consider in your visualization and dashboarding strategy. So just kind of a look back, the problem we've solved. We've been around SquaredUp. If you're not familiar with us, I'm sure we have a lot of customers on the call. But if you're not familiar with us, the problem we solve for SCOM is this visibility gap. So you have all this awesome data within SCOM, and then you have these people that need insights from that data. It's not just necessarily the SCOM admin. It could be management teams needing to understand the big picture of how that infrastructure is supporting their applications, or the operations center responsible for keeping that up, or the applications teams or the infrastructure owners needing analytics and insights into that data. And so those teams, they don't necessarily have access to SCOM. They don't know where to look if they do, perhaps, because they're not the SCOM teams. And maybe it's just too complex to use. And so what happens is those teams are pressuring typically the SCOM admin for dashboards and insights and information. And so that team is kind of being constantly interrupted by requests to do that. But SCOM itself has limited dashboarding capabilities. It's not meant to be a dashboarding solution. It's meant to be an infrastructure monitoring solution. And so there isn't native dashboard sharing. And so that's where SquaredUp has come in. That's our SquaredUp dashboard server solution built specifically for SCOM. And the important thing to announce here is that SquaredUp DS supports this direct migration. So just like Harold mentioned with Silect, we didn't have to do much of anything at all except for to test it and verify everything works exactly as we expect. So in fact, it does. So as you're looking to migrate to reduce that management overhead that Harold talked about, you can take SquaredUp with you, and you can get all the benefits I just talked about on the previous screen, instant visualization to all that SCOM data, beautiful intuitive dashboards from SquaredUp, and you can do that for SCOM MI. Really not much to do there except for preserve your investments and keep dashboarding with SquaredUp. There is kind of this question though, perhaps SCOM MI and a migration to SCOM MI is something you might see as an inflection point in your organization, which is going to ask, maybe prompt you to ask the question, is it time to rethink the role that SCOM plays in your monitoring strategy? And in no way are we proposing SCOM is going anywhere. Another data point from the big SCOM survey that I referenced at the top of the webinar, we asked these two questions related. How do you expect your use of SCOM to change over the next year? And then the second question was, how long do you expect to continue using SCOM? And it was quite clear, as we would have expected, that SCOM's not going anywhere. 86% of the people who responded, we had over 100 people respond, indicated that they're not looking to change their use of, or certainly not reduce their use of SCOM. In fact, almost half are looking to grow their use. And then if you look at the right side here, more than half plan to use SCOM for the next 5+ years, and the vast majority, almost 90%, looking to use it for the next couple of years. So the key takeaway, as I'm seeing it, and when we talk to our SquaredUp customers, is that SCOM, and now we think SCOM MI, they remain the best of breed monitoring solutions for Microsoft data center technologies. And ultimately, the reason why it's not going away is because that infrastructure isn't going away. It's going to be a big part of teams' kind of application strategies, and they need the best of breed monitoring for that. But, and this is yet another data point from that survey, we also know it shouldn't be a surprise that many organizations are on that cloud adoption journey. They have their applications hosted not just within their local Microsoft, largely a Microsoft data center, but it's hosted more and more in the cloud. Azure, unsurprisingly, being the predominant one, but across VMs as well. There's a network component. SolarWinds is a big one that people say they need visibility into. But sort of towards the bottom, you're seeing Prometheus and AWS CloudWatch come in as organizations are adopting multi-cloud with AWS, or they're adopting containers, and they need Prometheus for container monitoring. So it's clear that a bigger view of your monitoring data is required to get that big picture. And so we're hearing from our customers that SCOM is really starting to a little bit crack at the seams when it's being used as a single pane of glass. So again, infrastructure monitoring, definitely the best of breed, but as a single pane of glass, it's asking a lot to extend visibility across things like AWS CloudWatch and Prometheus with MPs. And so that's, we've been quite aware of this happening. This is not a new trend, right? SCOM MI is maybe just another point in that journey. But we've been hearing for customers for several years that they're having blind spots, that they're single pane of glass with SCOM and with SquaredUp on top sort of starting to burst at the seams. So we've been building the next generation of our product, which is SquaredUp Cloud. And SquaredUp Cloud, it is a single pane of glass in particular for the modern tech stack, for a world beyond data center monitoring. And so it's your cloud hosting solutions, it's your observability solutions like Datadog, Prometheus, Grafana, your application performance monitoring, of course your IT infrastructure, everything from SolarWinds and VMware, and of course SCOM and SCOM MI. But also as workloads are sort of shifting, it's also the development teams that need visibility of in one place, and even the business, is looking at abstracting visibility across the impact that their services are having on the business. And actually, what happens is there's more stakeholders needing more insights. There's management asking questions. There's DevOps teams. Oftentimes, there's this new SRE function, site reliability engineering. FinOps teams are wanting to understand cloud costs. So there's all kinds of data locked away behind these tools that goes beyond infrastructure monitoring, and certainly goes beyond data center infrastructure monitoring. And so that's the new SquaredUp. That's SquaredUp Cloud, very much built in inspiration from what we've done in the last 10 years, but also inspired directly by SCOM itself and its underlying object model and a lot of things like the roll-up that SCOM does. So that's SquaredUp Cloud. And just kind of a quote that I took from one of our customers is as they're evaluating their journey to SCOM MI, is their plan is to minimize SCOM's footprint by adopting SCOM MI. So as they're shifting, they're thinking maybe we'll reduce some of the MPs that we're using to the core Microsoft technologies, and then use SquaredUp Cloud more as their single pane of glass. So this is what they're using today, which is visibility on top of SCOM, and which is sitting on top of all that juicy data center data. And now they're thinking about, let's actually kind of extend our field of view, visibility for all the different kind of monitoring solutions that we need and engineering technologies. And SCOM's going to sit on top of the data center. That's what it does best. But we're also going to kind of use the best of breed cloud monitoring solutions or network monitoring solutions. And they're planning to adopt SquaredUp Cloud in this case. They're going to migrate from SquaredUp Dashboard Server to SquaredUp Cloud for visibility of that entire tech stack. We think SCOM MI is really an important prompt that maybe just ask the question, is it time to think about SCOM's role? And so that's just taking me to my last slide, which is kind of a summary, recapping the few different options I talked about for SCOM dashboards. The first one being that the default dashboard, at least visibility into all that data, is the SCOM web console itself. Obvious benefit is there's no third-party software required, so it comes out of the box and you can do plenty with that data. The challenge I mentioned is it's just not designed for sharing. It's not meant for sharing dashboards across the different teams that need sort of visibility into some of that data. So then that's the second solution we talked about, which is the SquaredUp solution that's been around for 10 years. SquaredUp Dashboard Server sits on top of that data and allows you to visualize it and sort of really easy to build dashboards and to share those dashboards across the different teams that need it. You can learn more at our dashboard server site, ds.squareup.com. And really it's SquaredUp Cloud that we think is we're hitting this inflection point where data is really everywhere. Best of breed monitoring solutions are very dispersed and distributed, and there's no reason to try to shoehorn a solution into the right monitoring tool. Use the tool that's best suited. If you're adopting multi-cloud, those cloud technologies have monitoring tools baked into them. Use those, but try to unify visibility around one solution if possible. That's our recommendation, and that's where SquaredUp Cloud comes in as a single pane of glass. And of course, we natively integrate with SCOM MI and the new cloud solution, and Azure and 50+ network cloud monitoring and developer tools. So you can learn more about that on SquaredUp.com. So that's kind of that topic there. I guess I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I'm going to take a pause here. I'm just going to look at the question panel myself, which means I'm going to minimize my presentation. I'll take a quick look. So do keep those questions coming in, both for Harold or for myself, if it's about Silect, if it's about migrating to SCOM MI, if it's a question about visibility. We're happy to take those as well. And we have Ash here at SquaredUp answering some of our questions. So I'll just take a quick pause. And while we're looking through those, I did want to just point out a lot of you folks are probably already aware, SCOMathon 2023. We've been doing SCOMathon for many years now, 3 years. I believe this is our third or maybe even our fourth year. It's coming up 1 month from today exactly, so May 25th, if you're interested in more. There's going to be a lot of different presenters and a lot of different topics diving in deep across SCOM MI and many other areas, so you can register at SCOMathon 2023.
So we've got a couple of questions. Harold, I think that these are going to be targeted at you for the most part. So the first most important one I'm sure everyone is asking is, first of all, is there a pricing calculator available for SCOM MI that you're aware of, or is there one that's being worked on?
Yeah, I'm not aware of a pricing calculator as of today. I have to believe this is something that the Microsoft product team will be making available, because again, that's kind of the first question that I often get asked is what is this thing going to cost us? So nothing available today as far as I know, but that should be something that should be available by the time SCOM MI is GA.
Fantastic, thank you. Another question was specifically around SCOM agents and for virtual machines that are hosted in Azure. Is there any sort of differencing in the licensing for deployed agents with SCOM MI, or is it similar to what it is today for on-prem SCOM?
Well, first of all, I'll say I'm not the best guy to answer questions on Microsoft licensing, but I you know, aside from obviously the cost incurred with running a VM in Azure, if that's where the question is for, I'm not aware of any differences in licensing from in that scenario. So I think you still have to license your SCOM agents the exact same way you do today.
Brilliant, thank you. The next one is about the sort of broader System Center product suite. So obviously you have Scorch and SMA and SCSM. Do these products have to be a certain version to integrate with SCOM MI as they do today, or is that going to be sort of like for like?
Yeah, that's going to be a question for the SCOM product team. I don't know. I really don't have visibility in terms of the other suite of products across System Center and how they're going to integrate with SCOM MI. I can only, I guess, give you sort of an anecdote from our own experience of working with SCOM MI, is that the calls that we make to our products, and we do some pretty sophisticated work with SCOM, whether it's authoring management packs or workflow reporting or what have you. Those interfaces did not change from our perspective, at least the interfaces that we use. So while I can't speak to versions and integration points with Service Manager, Scorch, or some of the other tools, I would hope that it's a pretty easy path for those other product teams to integrate with SCOM MI, just because of the consistency of the APIs.
Brilliant, thank you. And then a couple of questions around the migration. So the first question is, can we set up directly to SCOM MI, or is it migration only? And then the sort of follow-up question to that is then, is there a certain version of SCOM that you need to be on before migrating to MI?
So the console, obviously the SCOM console itself can connect directly to SCOM MI. The demo that I was showing using our MP Studio product connects directly to SCOM MI. So that obviously that's fully supported. What was the second part of that question? Sorry.
Oh, apologies. So that was the version of your current SCOM. When it comes to migrating, is there a certain level that needs to be at?
Well, I would defer to probably someone like Bob Cornelissen at TopCore, and I know Bob is on the call. He could probably answer more succinctly. I think the upgrade path, if you're running from SCOM 2019 to SCOM MI, I believe that's going to be a direct migration. We certainly, from a tooling perspective, we can certainly go from 2019 to SCOM MI directly. SCOM MI, as far as we see, is going to be based on SCOM 2022, so that upgrade path is supported. If you're running SCOM 2016, I think the best practice, perhaps the supported method, is to upgrade first to 2019 and then from 2019 to SCOM MI. But I would probably defer to someone like Bob at TopCore to provide us with a succinct answer on that.
Absolutely, yeah, that's not a problem. For anyone interested, we do have our SCOMathon Slack workspace where questions like these are easily answered as well. Hopefully, I think Jason may have a slide on that somewhere. If not, we'll Perfect. Community Answers is also another good resource that you can see on screen there. Basically, just ask the community via community.squaredup.com or via our Slack workspace if you're on there. If you'd like to learn more about that workspace, please do just drop us an email and we can send you a link to join. Bob is, of course, a member as well as several other MVPs. Question for Jason. So specifically, this is going to be the costs associated with SquaredUp products. And specifically, is it based on number of endpoints? I believe you've answered this one already in the chat, but if you wouldn't mind voicing that out loud, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. I'll take that one out loud. I did answer it in the chat. So the question was about the licensing for SquaredUp products, and it was pointed out products plural. So we do have the dashboard server product and the cloud product I touched upon. So the dashboard server product is licensed by users. We do have different tiers to that product. We have an EAM, an Enterprise Application Monitoring tier, and then there's an EAM X tier, which actually leverages the cloud product to extend visibility, but largely those are each user-driven licenses. For the cloud product, it's also anchored on user licenses. There's a secondary component to our cloud licensing. It's a SaaS-hosted product in the cloud. And so we do have costs associated with hosting that, and particularly the number of objects that are indexed when we connect to the different data sources that I mentioned. So if you have very large estates and SquaredUp is indexing, millions of different objects, there are limits on how many objects can be indexed and how much data is streamed into the SquaredUp dashboards from those tools. But those are largely set as sort of upper bounds, kind of fair use type limits. They're not something that we would expect people to factor too much in their licensing or even know how many objects they would want to have indexed. So we try to make it pretty simple and transparent, our pricing, and we anchor that on user licenses.
Brilliant, thank you. There are quite a few other questions around the sort of general cost of the migration licensing with Microsoft. As Harold has mentioned there, it's not really the topic that we can really provide an answer to today, unfortunately. I highly recommend reaching out to your Microsoft representative if you have one, or just speaking to the community as a whole. It's difficult for us to comment as it's just not our area of expertise. However, there is a good question that has been raised there. The migration tool that you've demoed today, Harold, the Silect Migration Assistant, is there a cost associated with that?
So the migration assistant is part of our Silect MP Studio product. So if you're a licensed user of MP Studio, then that migration assistant, you'll get that at no cost. If you're not a user of MP Studio, suggest you contact info@silect.com to get some pricing information on MP Studio.
Brilliant, thank you. There are some of the questions here in the chat. They are very sort of SCOM heavy, generally around things like resource pools and other areas that I think is a little bit outside of the scope of the call today. What we'll do is we'll make a note of those. I'll drop a few of you some emails just to point you in the direction of some resources that'll be able to assist you. But at this point, I think from the questions, I'm going to pass back to you, Jason, to close.
All right, yeah, thanks for running through those, Ash. Yeah, so as Ash mentioned, I just made sure to include some coffee break resources, but largely that's it. I was really just wanted to say thank you all for joining today. I think we had a good discussion. Thank you, Harold, for talking about the migration, the path to migrating the SCOM MI, and it was great having everybody here. Look to connect with you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.